It is 6 p.m. on Monday, August 26th, and I call this meeting of the Clear Creek Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and that its notice has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Our first item on the agenda is our public hearing to discuss the 24-25 budget and proposed 24 tax rate.
Ms. Benzai will present that, and it gives an opportunity for taxpayers to express their views concerning the 24-25 budget and 24 tax rate.
Good evening. Tonight marks one of the final parts of our budget process this year, which is to hold the public hearing to discuss the district's budget that will ultimately determine our tax rate that you will adopt in September at the board meeting. Notice of this meeting was provided and properly published. And with that, I will begin. There are three budgets that we will be asking the board for approval tonight. These are the TEA required budgets that require board approval. The general fund in the amount of $405 million. Interest and sinking at $101,340,000, and the child nutrition fund, which is $18,903,000. These, as I said, these are the three budgets that we will be asking you to approve later in the meeting. So starting in the spring, I just wanted to recap some of the goals and priorities that the board discussed and set out during the beginning of our budget process. The 24-25 budget will further CCISD's mission and strategic plan with financial integrity, maximizing benefits from available resources. And so these were the goals that were listed out, and I feel confident that we have achieved these goals in this budget process. The first was funding for improved student achievement. Second was competitive salaries and stipends and benefits. The board approved a 3% and 4% increase back in July, as well as an increase in the contribution to our health insurance plan. This budget will continue to fund our Safe and Secure program and also increase state revenues through the promotion of student attendance efforts. Also, we are implementing initiatives to provide enrollment growth. Mainly that is through our pre-K program, the initiatives that we've taken over the past spring to increase enrollment there. We're also leveraging excess reserves and other funds as needed. The bottom two goals are things that we continue to do and will continue to do over the next budget cycle, reviewing efficiencies in programs and human capital and exploring facility utilization efficiencies. During the budget cycle, there's always, when adopting a budget in Texas for a school district, there's many assumptions that go into play. The budget is revenue in a school district is determined on many factors, that are really unknown at the beginning of a budget process. So these budget assumptions include managing our resources efficiently and effectively with the goal to have a balanced budget by 25-26. We are retaining the 5% local homestead exemption for our homeowners in the district. We are incorporating expenditure reduction savings and revenue enhancements that we recognized really over the past year. We're using a realistic and defined average daily attendance, assuming an enrollment loss of 320 students. So this is what the demographer has anticipated in his demographic report that was provided last year. This budget will meet budget requirements without accessing more than 20% of capital and contingency funds. We do have a transfer that will be is included in the budget from capital and contingency in the amount of $4.9 million to basically ensure that revenues equal expenditures in this budget for a balanced budget. And finally, we want to maintain adequate general fund balance, which is defined as 2 months of operating expenses. The budget has several challenges with it. Of course, student enrollment or attendance coming in below projections is always one of our biggest challenges, and so we try to be very conservative when we're predicting that and utilizing those numbers in our revenue estimates. Inflation has played a big role in our budget recently, in recent years, so we are anticipating increased costs for that. It's a challenge in the event that we did have inadequate funding to meet the needs of our students or are unable to recruit and retain quality staff. Fortunately, we've had good progress in recruiting and retaining our staff this year. Also, a challenge can be sustaining our current programs and any spending required by unfunded mandates. So when I had to look at the different factors that really influence this budget process, I narrowed it down really to 6. Our student enrollment and attendance, which is always the main factor that goes into those revenue assumptions, those revenue figures. Staffing in a district where you have a decline in enrollment, you have to make sure that your staffing is appropriate. And so we started in the early spring working with our principals to anticipate what would happen in our campuses and to ensure that we were staffed correctly. Legislation is a factor. Of course, this year there was no legislation impact really, but we are hopeful for the next biennium that we will be going through over the next fall and spring, looking at what's going on with legislation, hopefully increased funding for our school district. Property values and tax rate compression also play a big role. We're seeing our property values growth start to slow a little bit, and we did see a little bit of tax rate compression as well this year, so we'll show you that in a little bit. And then the impact of ESSER funding. So over the past 3 years, we have had $36 million in ESSER funding after post-COVID. Those funds have really been spent equally over the past 3 years, but many of the items that were funded through ESSER are now returning back to the general fund, and so we're seeing a budget impact this year from that. We also closely watch inflation, and that has, again, had a huge role in our budget over the past year or so. So looking at our enrollment and our average daily attendance, I have really a 6-year chart of where we are. The high, you can see over on the left side, we were at 42,234 students back in 2020, and with an ADA of 39,754. You can see post-COVID 2022 how those numbers started to drop. Really, they were stagnant for a couple years, but we did start bringing up that attendance rate, which really helped bring our attendance numbers up as well. We ended last year at the point in time where this attendance was taken. I believe that's a snapshot number in October. We were at 39,960 students. And then this coming year, our budget is based on an ADA of 36,800 students. That's about 350 below where we were last year, and at 94.64 attendance rate. So we're watching that closely. We're watching it every day, actually. We're getting numbers in and seeing actually the numbers rise over the first few weeks. So we're watching that very closely. Our revenues in the general fund are outlined here. we have a total of $405 million in revenues this year for the general fund. The bulk of those revenues come from local taxes and from state revenue based on our attendance and student enrollment numbers. So I like to show just in a chart the really the funding source that we have. So our budget last year included about 57% in local funds and 41% in state. This coming year, the budget is about 55% local funds and 42% state. So as if you look over the years, as the tax rate starts being compressed, the state share starts picking up more and the local share goes down. So it's really just a factor of that tax rate and the local and state funding formulas that they have. Again, our revenues do include under the other line item include the transfer from capital and contingency to balance the budget. In the event that we don't need that, we would not transfer those funds, but it is included in this budget. Look at our general fund expenditures. We are a business of people, so again, our payroll costs continue to be high at 88%. That is covers our 5,000 plus employees, substitutes, and benefits. The second highest expenditure that we have is in contracted services at 6%. Our contracted services have a few big items, which include our contract with Galveston County to provide SLO services to the district. Our appraisal district fees are included in that amount, as well as utility and maintenance contracts. We have supplies and materials at 3%, and then under our other operating expenditures, the bulk of those expenditures include our property insurance, which is one of our largest expenditures, non-payroll expenditures in the district, tuition for our hearing co-op, and election cost. I like to show our taxpayers how each dollar is spent in the general fund, and I do like to point out that if you look at our instruction and instructional related services, we spend 66 cents of every dollar in the classroom, so we're very pleased with that. The next largest expenditure that we have at 7 cents is in our plant maintenance, so that would include things like utilities, our insurance, our custodial and maintenance salaries. We also, the next largest is 6 cents in our school administration. So those would be for expenditures in our campus administration and the office staff across the district and in the campuses. And then at 4 cents, we have counseling and social work services, and another 4 cents in student transportation. So all of those together are about 87 cents, with the other expenditures spread out throughout the budget. Taking a look at our fund balance, we have a board policy CE, which outlines the goal of our fund balance, and the board policy, which is that we shall work together to maintain 2 months unassigned fund balance in the general fund and 10% of the projected annual debt service payments in the restricted fund balance and debt service. So this really is important because it provides us adequate funds to meet our needs, emergency needs as well, and it also helps us ensure a favorable bond rating when we go out, as we do, to sell bonds throughout the year. It also has an impact on our first rating, our financial integrity rating that TEA produces, and so that's one factor and another reason why we want to maintain a good, solid fund balance. So in looking at over the past 4 years, you can see when we ended 2023, we ended with about 2.23 months of operating expenditures with an unassigned fund balance of almost 74 million. We are anticipating ending this fiscal year 2024 with a fund balance of 87 million, of which about 80.6 million would be unassigned, and that would produce about a 2.39 months of operating expenditures in fund balance. Overall, the general fund budget is reflected here. you'll see there's various items that are increased, some that are decreased. I wanted to point out just a few things for you. If you look at on the revenue side, under the federal program revenues, you'll see a drop of about $3.5 million, and that's a result of the SHARS funding, that Medicaid funding that we've received over the years, that districts across Texas have taken some large cuts in, and also the indirect costs revenue that we receive from ESSER will go away as well. Looking over at expenditures, you'll see a large increase in curriculum and staff development, and that is really just we've moved the funding of certain positions out of Function 11 into Function 13, where we felt they were more properly classified. Under Function 31, there's an increase of $1.5 million. This is guidance and counseling services, and this is the impact of we had to move certain staffing positions out of our federal IDB funds, which are our separate fund, and fund those positions in the general fund, because we had really tapped out the expenditures in IDB, and we needed to give some room in there. We also saw an increase in transportation, and if you recall, that's one of the areas that we have had a big shortage of staffing in there. We have bumped up their pay with an adjustment that we discussed at the July board meeting in hopes to further recruit additional transportation staff. Under 51, one of the largest increases that you'll see is under plant maintenance of $8.8 million, and that is the result of bringing about $6.8 million in electric costs out of ESSER, and again funding them through the general fund. Looking over at our debt service fund, so this fund is utilized to cover the principal and interest on our bonds that have been issued and approved by taxpayers. So we are seeing the first principal and interest payments from the first sale of our bonds, which was $140 million that we recently had. So you'll see the debt service expenditures will rise by about $11.5 million in that fund. This budget is funded through a 27-cent tax rate, and the tax rate will be approved in September. But this budget that we'll ask you to approve would be built on a 27-cent tax rate. We do anticipate seeing a deficit in this fund of about $5.8 million. If you recall, our fund balance in the debt service fund, it exceeds the 10% requirement. And so we know that over the next few years, if we maintain that 27-cent tax rate, that we'll start drawing down that fund balance a little bit for the next several years until property values come up and it evens out. So we're totally okay with having that deficit this year. It is based on property value growth of 3.5% for this year. Our Child Nutrition Fund is a standalone fund. This fund is funded through meal fees that students pay, as well as reimbursements from the federal government for food, for meals served. It covers all of the expenditures, all of the food costs, and the food service staff that go along with that. And so this is a balanced budget of $18.9 million. They have an estimated fund balance of about $8 million in the Child Nutrition Fund. So looking at our tax rate this year, again, it will be approved in September. It's built upon a maintenance and operations tax rate of 0.699 cents and 27 cents. 69.9 cents and 27 cents in the interest and sinking fund, for a total tax rate of 96.9 cents per $100 of property value. In looking at our tax rate, you'll see every year we have to go to TEA with our property values, and they look at our initial property value growth to determine our maximum compressed rate. We have submitted that data to TEA, And the calculations reflected that our maximum compressed rate should be 61.9 cents. That's almost right at what the minimum that we can have. Most districts across, if you look across Texas, they're all sitting very close to that bottom because of all of the compression. There's actually a top and a bottom, and I can't quote those, but we are right very near the bottom of that compression. We may see in future legislative sessions them bringing that window down even more to try to compress tax rates as well, but we'll see what they do in the next legislative session. So we'll have the 8 golden pennies on top of that maximum compressed rate, which brings us to the 69.9 cents, and then the debt service rate of 27 cents. I thought it was interesting to see, if you look over the past 5 years, our tax rate has cumulatively dropped by just over 34 cents as well. And this year's drop will be less than a penny at 0.0056. In looking at our property tax values, about 1/3 of our properties are located in Galveston County and 2/3 in Harris County. We do have certified values from Galveston County. We are hopeful to get our certified property values from Harris County this week. So that's made it a little bit difficult to build the budget, but we've used the estimates that they initially provided. So as you can see, our growth in Galveston County this year in values was about 9.15%. The growth in Harris County was coming in at 2.28%, so that's an average of 4.64% overall. I found it a little bit interesting too. If you look at 2023, the overall growth was 3.78%. If you think about the fact that we increased our homestead from 40,000 to 100,000, if that had not have happened, that growth would have been much higher than 3.78%. But it does look like we may be seeing a little bit of slowdown in the growth. One of the items that is listed on our notice that was included in our newspaper and posted is the average market value and taxable value of residences. So we went over this at the last board meeting, but as you can see, our average market value did decline slightly. We have tried. The numbers are built from both counties, and Harris County is where we saw some decline in the market value. I don't have a good reason why that went down. We have inquired, but that's just what they're providing is that this is how the numbers came out. So don't have a good explanation for that. When you look at the taxable value of residences, though, you'll see that it went up by almost $17,000. So if you recall, there is a 10% cap, appraisal growth cap on homeowners. If their value goes up more than 10%, it's capped at 10% from year to year. So eventually that 10% goes down because that increase will come on to their taxable value the following year until they've worked off of that. So that is probably the reason why you're seeing the growth in the taxable value, is because they were limited last year and now they're coming out outside of that 10% cap. Our rates are listed here for comparison purposes. So just based on this data that we receive from the counties, that would be an increase on the average taxable value of residences of about $145.40 for our homeowners. And that concludes our budget presentation. The school board will consider the budget for approval as an action item later in this meeting. And I would like to just take this opportunity to thank our finance department, our purchasing department. They are a great team, and school districts are rated not only on their instruction but also on their financial standing. And so we again received notice that we would get a superior achievement of A on our financial integrity rating from TEA, and also we continue to receive awards in purchasing from TASBO and awards for our financial reporting in our financial report. So I just want to thank our finance team. They do a great job.
Thank you, Ms. Benzai. Before we go to the board for any questions, I did want to ask, as part of our public hearing, if there are any members of the community who were here this evening who wish to make a comment about the public hearing presentation. And seeing none, I'll open it up if any trustees had any questions or comments.
I guess
Mr.
just
Bone?
really quickly, and I'm sure this is something we'll continue to struggle with as we go through the tax rate process. But if you go back to the changes by county that we saw, are those net of the homestead exemption?
Yes,
Okay.
it's taxable values.
So the 9.15 in Galveston and the 2.28 in Harris that we're estimating are after you account for homestead exemption?
Yes,
Okay. And so if these are assuming a 4.64% growth, is there a different, I mean, have you run the INS model to see what that looks like if we assume a little bit higher growth? Or have you only run it with
higher than 4.64. We
yeah,
ran it with 5.
4.64?
We ran it with 5. I
Right.
do have numbers. I think we dropped it to 3.5. And so once we get this, we'll give you some better numbers for that. I do anticipate, not sure I anticipate this to grow, because there's still, even in Galveston County, there's properties that have not been certified. They're under appraisal review. And I suspect that in Harris County will have quite a bit as well once they do send us the certified values. But yes, we'll do different scenarios for you on that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Bone. Did you have any other questions?
Well, I guess my only other question, are we expecting to have certified values from Harris County before next month?
Yes.
Okay,
This week is they've committed to having them to us.
thanks.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Ms. Benzai, just two questions for you. You referenced our use of the ESSER funds over the last few years. Just for members of the public who are tuning in, who may not be as familiar with how we use those funds, if you could just hit maybe some high-level areas that we were able to use those funds for.
Yes, so we did utilize some funds for intervention early on. We utilized funding for some of the costs that came along with COVID, as far as things we needed to stay safe, mask and cleaning supplies, additional nursing support that we needed during that time. We had substitute costs that we utilized it for. I believe we used it some for summer school and some technology equipment for students and staff as well.
Okay, thank you. And then, Mr. Larson, did you have?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. You know, I think when those ESSER funds became available, they became available statewide, and a lot of districts, in my estimation, weren't as judicious as we were in what they did with them. And I think especially the things like the technology purchases we did were very forward thinking. And I think we did a really good job of putting those funds to use in where we really needed them. And I think part of why we're in the position we are today is because along with so many other things, we did the right thing with the ESSER funding. So I'd like to thank your team for that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Ms. Benz, I also wanted just to ask, you referenced the potential for future compression if that were to happen. If that were to happen, based on what we've seen, we think the state would then help to make up the additional difference in the budget that we wouldn't be collecting. Do we expect that's what might happen?
That's normally what happens, is when the tax rate, they compress the tax rate, the formulas work out so that the state picks up increases their share. It's really, compression is only, the purpose of it is to change the local and state share. It's that balance beam we see. So the more they compress, the more their share goes up.
Thank you. Mr. Bond?
Yeah, just kind of as a comment on that, from watching the last legislative session, typically the way that works is they will force every district down a percentage, like that, or a specific number of cents. So that was where I think it was 17 cents came from.
I believe last year it was compressed and then an additional, I want to say 10 cents on top of that at the very
I
last
think it
minute.
was 18 cents, and
So-
then we added the one golden penny back, and then
Right.
we voted for 3 more, so it
Mhm.
ended up at 14. But they do that; they force all of the districts to adopt a lower rate, and then they backfill the loss of funding to an equivalent amount using state funds. So
Correct.
essentially, they're buying down the M&O tax. And what I've heard from legislators on that subject is the idea is to keep doing that every 2 years until eventually M&O is pushed down to 0, and that funding comes completely from the state. That might be a ways away, but that's the eventual plan.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Bone. Ms. Benz, I would also echo the thanks to you and to the team. And I know members across cabinet in the district and leadership positions helped to take a hard look at staffing units and requirements and making adjustments to how we're accomplishing the day-to-day work of making sure that students are receiving the best instruction that we can possibly provide. And so thank you for helping put us in a position that was one that was of better control than we would have otherwise been in had we just waited and hoped for the best this legislative session. I think it's reflective of just the culture and the just the standard that we set as a district, and I think that goes a long way when we think about how it rolls out across the district, across our community, so they know that our commitment remains the same. And so we use that discipline for all the decisions we're making. And so despite what happens at the state, despite what happens in a legislative session, despite what happens with differences of enrollment, we stay focused on making sure we're doing the most we can with the resources we have. So thank you to you for your leadership. I would say you're a bit of a whisper when it comes to how we do this work. And you really do spend the time to help us understand all the different ways that we can really consider moving forward. So I just wanted to echo that to the team and then to you as well. So thank you. The board will now move to closed session as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.001, concerning purposes permitted by the act, including 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, 551.074, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignments, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an employee. And the time is 6:31. session. And our next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance and Texas Pledge.
Center Intermediate, do we have some Lighthouse team members here? Y'all come on up. Okay, and there's the flags right there, so we're gonna look over there, and who wants to lead us off? Oh my gosh, we're gonna roll. You go, American, Texas, we go, here we go. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
And please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. Y'all wait just a minute. Okay, and so what group are you in? What group are you in? Like, you got invited to say the pledge because you are a part of
The Lighthouse.
the Lighthouse team? The Lighthouse team, wonderful. And what does the Lighthouse team do?
Basically, we help around the school with events and other stuff like that. Basically, we help organize stuff.
Good. Help organize. Anything else?
We demonstrate leadership.
So you demonstrate leadership, and all of you, that's important to you, right? Well, excellent. Well, we are so excited about that, and we're very grateful that you are here. And part of our strategic plan is to develop leadership in students and adults. So we are thrilled that y'all are doing that. And I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, just to stand up here for a second, because we are going to have a little special announcement about your school. Okay? So hold on. As we kick off the new school year, we are also launching our 25-30 strategic plan, where our vision is to empower every student with a world-class education that ignites passions and fuels endeavors. Please join me in congratulating Space Center Intermediate for being named a National PTA School of Excellence. This national recognition highlights the school's commitment to partner with parents so that each child achieves, contributes, and leads with integrity. The partnership between the teachers and parents is more important than ever, and I cannot think of a more deserving honor for Space Center Intermediate. So we are going to ask your principal, Dr. Thornton, to come up. Please come on up. Yes. Come on. Admin, Mr. Cyprian. Yes, yes. Yes, we have our admin team here. PTA leadership. Y'all come on up. Thank you so much. So we're going to get a big picture. Yes, we'll get this. Perfect.
For now.
We're going to give your adults a little medal, right? Is that right? And let me, Amy is in office? Yes, yeah, ex in office. Amy, I'm going to ask you just to share a little bit about the process that you went through for this and what this means to the PTA. And thank y'all so much for being here.
Oh gosh. Yeah, this was something that we as a board were really excited about. So the process is schools apply, They have to begin by taking a survey of their campus. They have like National PTA has survey questions that are tied to the national standards for family school partnerships. We do a survey at the beginning of the year. We identify as a team from that survey what are some gaps or some areas where we think we can strengthen our school family partnerships. We identified an area that we could work on as utilizing, folks said that communication from the school was really good, but they didn't feel like the school used the talents and skills of the community and the parents to the best of their ability. So we decided to have a couple of events where we invited our families to contribute information about what they do to help enrich the school. So we did a career day in the fall, during the day, where parents could come and talk about their careers, and a couple of our parents did that are here. And then we also did an international night in the evenings for parents that couldn't come during the day to share a little bit about their culture and their heritage to show how diverse of a community we are. And then those two together at the end, we did the survey again, and we found that stuff did increase. Like folks felt like they were feeling more engaged in that area. So we're really excited, and we're talking about doing it again this year. Thank you.
All right. I understand we're going to have a big banner. Is that right, Dr. Thornton? So we're ready for that?
I just can't say how proud I am of our community, and I really appreciate our PTA board. They have done everything that they can to help us be a more inclusive school, and I'm just so proud of our students stepping up to be leaders. And yes, we're going to be displaying that banner very proudly in the front of the school.
This is parents, teachers, admin, students, all together. That's what it looks like. Thank you so much. Yeah, sorry kids, but I kept y'all up here because it is a award for everybody. And the bottom line, it's all about y'all. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, well now on to a little bit different award, National Speech and Debate Association Competition Placement. For the first time since 2013, Clear Creek ISD is home to a national finalist in the National Speech and Debate Association's championship. Congratulations to Stephanie Williams from Clear Creek High School, who placed 5th in the poetry reading category. Come on up, Stephanie. Okay, and it's symphony. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, then make sure this is right now. This is fact check. There were 430 competitors in this event. Yes. Oh my goodness. And Symphony performed 10 times over 5 days to get the final round, to get into the final round of 6 competitors. So do you have Mr. Darby? Come on up. Mr. Darby, speech and debate sponsor, Ms. Orr. So we're going to ask Symphony, Mr. Darby, so what do you have to do to get this world-class level of competition and excellence? What did you do?
Well, it is a lot of hard work and dedication, a lot of hours put in, and of course my coach, Mr. Darby, was an invaluable resource to me, and overall, like, it was just an amazing experience, and that's what it is.
Congratulations.
No, she's amazing. That's about it.
And you help her along the way. Thank you so much. It's a teamwork. Well, thank y'all very much. Congratulations. now we're recognizing from a student to a staff member. Clear Creek ISD is proud to announce that Heidi Danner has been selected to represent Region 4 as an inclusive practices stakeholder. Heidi, a former CCISD Teacher of the Year and current Special Services Coordinator, will represent 47 school districts on issues such as curriculum, assessment, and instruction for students with disabilities. She will be a positive voice for our students and teachers at the state level. So we are so proud, and congratulations, Heidi. Dr. Staley, come on up. We'll get a picture. Just a quick question. What exactly, when it talks about inclusive practices, could you just share what that, what that looks like and the benefit for students?
So we're getting an opportunity with Region 4 to come together as a collaborative community of educators who work with students across all educational settings to share some best practices that we use instructionally to support student growth and success. So I'm excited to be able to brag on CCISD and some of the strengths that we bring to the table, but also to borrow some knowledge from other educators across our region to continue to support not only student growth, but also the growth of our educators.
Thank you so much, Heidi. I like the way she said that, borrow. The best and the best, whatever that looks like. That's wonderful. Well, we have a TAEA, Texas Art Education Association District of Distinction Award. For the 5th time, our visual arts program has been recognized as one of the best in Texas. Congratulations to Mr. Goodman. Come on up, and our art teachers across Clear Creek ISD, providing a well-rounded visual arts education that inspire creativity among our students. The Texas Art Education Association's District of Distinction Award is the highest honor in the visual arts education. So we are so excited about that. Congratulations. Yeah. I'm just saying. But it's a world-class designation. I mean, truly, we talk about a world-class education, and this is what this is. Can you tell us a little bit, briefly, the criteria?
So it's about the quality of the program. It's all about staffing. Not all districts in the state, have art instruction at the elementary school. So we're very fortunate here in Clear Creek ISD to have a K through 12. We have an amazing staff. For example, at the high school, we have 4 full-time art teachers at each campus. It's a very vibrant and healthy program, so we're very proud of what the work they do year in and year out.
Exciting. Well, thank you very much, and we are very pleased with that. Thank you. Congratulations. And I see our theater friends. We are excited about this. The Texas Education Theater Association Theater District of Distinction and Campus of Distinction Award. Clear Creek ISD has also received statewide recognition for its theater program. The Texas Education Theater Association has awarded CCISD the Theater Distinction the Theater District of Distinction Award. This remarkable achievement is a testament to the unwavering dedication and tireless efforts of our theater teachers. In addition to earning the district distinction, several of our schools earned campus distinction awards. Any administrators and theater teachers, please come forward, and we're going to specifically focus Bayside Intermediate, League City Intermediate, Clear Creek Intermediate, Clear Lake High School, Y'all come on up. Congratulations. Administrators, y'all come on up.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. They want all of y'all to come down by the astronaut. It's new this month.
Okay, so this is theater. So just, we have profile of a learner, critical thinkers, creators, communicators. What skill sets do you believe or that you see developing in your children and your students? You want to just something? Theater people can always talk.
That is very true. No, obviously in our classrooms, we really strive to build community. It's something we encourage our students to go out into the school and do as well, making sure that we are building confident, clear communicators and people who are comfortable going out and helping in our community is something that we focus on a lot.
Yes, I think that the theater department did a great job in this past year working in our PLC communities, our communities growing, and we were analyzing the data. And last year we had one group that won the campus distinction, and this year we have 4. So that was really excellent, and we can only anticipate that there'll continue to be more.
And that profile of the learner is being developed in your classrooms. Thank you so much. We are so grateful. Thank you.
Our next agenda item is a district update.
Okay, thank you, President Sanchez. Well, the 24-25 school year is off to a wonderful start. I would like to thank our trustees for joining us at the front of doors to welcome more than 39,000 students back to our buildings. Our classrooms are fully staffed, our buses are cool, with route times improving daily, and our teachers are engaging their students in world-class experiences. We just had a chance to see that right now. So we have a video to share with you. Okay, and we all know a successful start of the school year does not begin the moment the bell rings. It takes a lot of hard work to hire the right people, maintain and improve our facilities, and ensure our curriculum is updated and our professional learning meets student needs. Our school year began with a transition day, a holdover tradition from COVID that we continue today. It's a day when students in pre-K, kindergarten, 6th and 9th come today early to acclimate to the school, learn locker combinations, and learn about campus culture before the rest of the student body comes the following day. Now, a full day of learning was hard on some of our youngest learners, but I guarantee that they're getting the hang of it by now. I think the teachers felt like that too, especially by Friday. Our enrollment continues to increase. For example, on the first day of school, we had 38,710 students in attendance, and as of this afternoon, we have 39,583. And we anticipate these numbers to increase generally through Labor Day. We hired 332 new teachers this year, which is below our annual average of about 350. And the community warmly welcomed them. For over 50 years, the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce has hosted a special luncheon for new teachers. Most new hires have an average of 7 years of teaching experience and come from universities such as U of H, Clear Lake, and Texas A&M. Like many of our area school districts, we face challenges in fully staffing, like many area school districts, we do face challenges in staffing positions in our support services that are difficult to staff. And I'm thankful the board for increasing the hourly rate for these hard to staff positions like bus drivers, mechanics, and custodial staff. And as a kind of a report on the vacancies in transportation, 41 bus drivers. We did have a vacancy beginning, but we have 19 in the queue for training, only 1 bus aide vacancy, and 0 mechanic vacancy. So that is a large improvement. We know there's a supply and demand issue with drivers, but this is a huge improvement from last year. Also, during this time last year, we faced huge hurdles in keeping our buses and schools cool. I remember placing ice chests on school buses and giving drivers cooling towels. Mr. Miller, but what a difference a Vader and bond approval makes. We've been able to address these challenges on the road and within our buildings, making this brutal August heat manageable. Our transportation team has made huge strides, but work remains to ensure that every route and trip bus maintains a working air conditioner every day, and they work very diligently towards that. We had chiller upgrades at many schools, new playgrounds at 5, and 4 more to come. In addition, the entrance to Bay Elementary was remodeled to ensure a secure entrance and for students and staff. The renovations at the Learner Support Center established the first CCISD Behavior Support Center, and it is complete. Although the center hasn't yet had students assigned, the dedicated team working with those students has been actively supporting teachers directly in the classrooms across campuses over the last 2 weeks. Over the first 6 days of school, we served 73,471 lunches, which is about similar to this time last year. So we have a wonderful group that is working to serve our lunches and child nutrition, and we could not have a successful start to the school year without our community partners. We are grateful for our Galveston County school liaison officers and local police agencies across 8 jurisdictions. I think they enjoyed the first week of school just as much as our students did, and we are so grateful for their support. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. Our next item on the agenda is community input. The purpose of community input is for the entire board to receive feedback from citizens. The board will hear public comments but will not respond except as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act to respond to an inquiry by a member of the public or by a board member with a statement of specific factual information, recitation of existing policy, or to deliberate a proposal to place a subject on the agenda for a subsequent meeting. Matters brought forth that require a response will be addressed by the superintendent as appropriate. All information received is subject to verification. Community input is scheduled for 30 minutes and has 2 forums. Those requesting to address the board regarding items on the agenda are granted up to 3 minutes to address their topics, and those who sign up to address items not on the board agenda are granted 1 minute. In a district our size, there will certainly be issues or topics which will generate considerable interest from the public. It is important that members of our community be able to address the school board respectfully, without disruption, and without fear of intimidation from other attendees. On behalf of the board, the superintendent, and CCISD staff, we welcome your input during CCISD board meetings. We request that everyone exhibit the respect and understanding each person deserves when addressing the school board during the public input portion of the meeting. And our first speaker this evening is Tom Davis.
Thank you. Starting a year ago, I have frequently said, thank you for everything you do to support parental authority, teacher pedagogy, and the future of our boys and girls. Going into year 2, I'll take it a step further. Parental authority is more important than teacher pedagogy for the future of our boys and girls, even during the school day. Since the late 70s, this premise has had strong legal support in U.S. Code Title 20, Section 1232H, Pupil Privacy Protection. It hasn't been implemented well on a top-down or a bottom-up basis, so it's time to work on it from the inside out. Just as the gavel measures public speaking time, I will use an egg timer to measure out private speaking time. Together as parents, teachers, and future-oriented city council and school board members, let's comply with Title 20 from the inside out. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Cobaruvius. John Cobaruvius. Okay. Next speaker is Renita Baker. I'm sorry. Renita Harvey. I'm sorry. Havey. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
As stated on the CCISD website, the curriculum for AP classes, quote, requires more advanced and intensive work. As college-level courses, advanced placement courses prepare a student for the advanced placement examinations. The AP Physics exam is the hardest AP exam, according to the internet. When school started, the kids in 2 AP Physics 1 classes at Clear Springs expected to learn a lot this year, but that hasn't happened yet, because their teacher quit before school started. On the 3rd day of school, the teacher assigned to teach the class told them they were not allowed to ask questions because he didn't know anything. The kids and parents weren't officially notified until the 4th day. It's going to be hard to find an AP Physics 1 teacher. Meanwhile, how are these kids doing? To them, failure is not an option. Is that the staff's mantra now too? The kids deserve someone who can teach AP Physics 1 now. Think outside the box to find someone. I'm sure this is a difficult situation for the staff, but it is more difficult for the kids. Failure is not an option for both.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move adoption of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, if you'll raise your right hand. And it passes unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Next item, consider approval of the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget.
Ms. Benzai will come back up. The board will approve the general fund, debt service fund, and child nutrition fund budgets. And the information was presented during the public hearing earlier this evening. The proposed budget incorporates the budget goals, assumptions, priorities, and risk established by the Board of Trustees. And Ms. Benzai will share that information.
Thank you. And as Dr. Engel stated, there's three budgets for approval for you tonight: General Fund, Debt Service, and Child Nutrition Fund. TEA does require that these budgets be adopted by expenditure category. So you'll see the various expenditures, starting with Function 11 within the three budgets. And we are recommending that the board approve these budgets for the fiscal year 24-25. I'll be happy to answer any further questions for you.
Thank you, Ms. Benzai. Any questions from the board? Any comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President.
Oh, excuse me.
Well, I was just going to make a quick comment, just in case people are tuning in. There was a hearing before this, so a lot of our questions were answered during that and during the process leading up to this. But I did want to say a quick thank you to Ms. Benzai and the budget team for all of their hard work on this, because this is the result of months and months and months of work. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sure. Any other comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 General Fund, Debt Service Fund, and Child Nutrition Fund budgets by function as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, if you raise your right hand. Passes unanimous. Thank you. Next item is consider approval of agreement for the purchase of attendance credit.
And Ms. Benzai will share that information.
Okay, so each year TEA notifies school districts that have a property wealth per weighted average daily attendance that exceeds a certain level. In Clear Creek ISD's case, $49.28 per WADA, which is weighted average daily attendance. Our wealth is in CCISD is estimated to be $64.27 per weighted average daily attendance. As you know, the tax rate that we will adopt includes 8 golden pennies, also known as Tier 2 Level 1 enrichment pennies. And these 8 pennies generate additional enrichment funding because our property value per average daily attendance is below $129.52. So in the event the board did adopt any of those 9 copper pennies that we do not plan on adopting this year, those are known as Tier 2 Level 2 funding, we would generate tax revenue but would be subjected to recapture because our wealth exceeds that dollar amount. So current law provides districts with 5 options to reduce their wealth, and we are recommending option 3, which is to purchase attendance credits from TEA. So even though we are not adopting any of the copper pennies and we will not be subject to recapture, we must comply with these requirements, including obtaining board approval and recording this action item in the board minutes. And the superintendent's recommendation is very long, but this is the wording of the approval that must be recorded in the minutes for this action item.
Thank you, Ms. Benza. Any questions from the board or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Bowen?
I move that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Trustees for the 2024-2025 school year delegate contractual authority to obligate the school district under Texas Education Code 11-1511C4 to the superintendent solely for the purpose of obligating the district under TEC 48257 and TEC Chapter 49 subchapters A and D, and the rules adopted by the Commissioner of Education as authorized under TEC 4906. This includes approval of the agreement for the purchase of attendance credit netting Chapter 48 funding.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, if you raise your right hand. And it passes unanimous. Thank you. Next item is consider approval of the use of capital project funds for transportation-related projects.
And I believe Mr. Aragon and Dwayne Cargill will come up and discuss the use of capital project funds for the replacement of aging white fleet vehicles.
Correct. Good evening, everybody. So Mr. Cargill here does a fantastic job of keeping our white fleet vehicles going. And after doing some audits, he determined that there are 9 white fleet vehicles that have been identified to having reached their useful life. 7 of them are maintenance vans. 1 of them is a maintenance flatbed, and 1 of them is a technology minivan. So this capital request is to utilize capital and contingency reserve funds totaling $520,923, and this includes a contingency amount of $10,000 to purchase these white fleet vehicles.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Did you have any other comments?
Just if you have any questions, I'm able to answer.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Brown, the number you said, would you repeat that again?
It's 7 maintenance vans, 1 maintenance flatbed, and 1 technology van. So 9 total.
And then for a total amount of?
$520,923.
Is it 510,923 or 520?
520,923, and 10,000 of that is a contingency amount.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the agenda item says 510.
It's a different page. I was
Okay.
looking for one as well.
So you'll see the 510 on the next for the actual purchase.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure because I was looking at a different page in our packet. Any other questions from the board? I'll entertain a motion.
Before I make the motion, I just wanted to thank you for when you came on board. I remember you had evaluated our fleet and eliminated, can't remember, 30 plus maybe vehicles at the time. So just, you know, having a plan and process and being able to, you know, save the district money overall by determining should we keep sinking money into, you know, something, or should we just go buy new, you know, things of that nature. Kind of going back to earlier in the meeting, it just helps us, you know, the district remain in a financially, you know, better position than most districts. So thank you. And no further questions. I move that the board approve the use of capital project funds in the amount of $520,923 for transportation-related projects.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. It passes unanimous. Thank you. And next item on the agenda is consider approval of award of the contract.
So this is just asking for approval of the contract itself. That's where the $510,923 comes into play. We did want to keep 10,000 in reserve in case we have some unidentified expenses that go with it, radios and that type of thing.
Thank you.
So we did an RFP, and this was the best option out of the 2 responses that we got back in July.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the award of contract 2025.805 White Fleet for maintenance and technology with Sames Bastrop Ford for the purchase of 9 White Fleet vehicles in the amount of $510,923.
Thank you, Mr. McKay. Any other comments or questions from the board? All those in favor, raise your right hand. And it passes unanimous. Thank you. And our next item on the agenda is our 2024-2025 federal grant applications update.
Okay, and Mr. Kidwell will present federal grant applications the district is applying for information and discussion.
Good evening. I think you all know either from a previous board meeting or from a finance committee meeting that pursuant to our policy each year, we present the federal grants that we're applying for that year in a public hearing to the board so that the public is aware of what we're doing and can ask questions or provide comment, etc. So, pulling out my glasses so I can see. The largest portion of the grants that we apply for, so I have my presentation here and I can't see it. I'm looking at the meeting as why. I apologize for the delay. Oh, okay, thanks. That means nothing to me, but since I've already delayed you a little bit, I'll tell a quick story. Anytime I'm going to present, someone will always ask, what technology, what AV do you need? I was like, I can't use any. I don't know how to use any of it. I mean, if spreadsheets and email, yes, definitely. But for presentations, no, absolutely not. So I'm going to credit Amber Patrick, our grant writer, for putting together this wonderful presentation. So the ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act Consolidated Federal Grant Application, covers Titles 1, 2, 3, and 4. Title I is just over 6.1 million, and as you're aware, we have 17 Title I campuses. This is to support the services that meet the needs of the students on those campuses. Title II Part A is just over 1.1 million, and that's for professional learning, teacher and principal quality. Title III Part A ELA is 488,523. That's for our emerging bilinguals. We used to call limited English proficient. The language is still in the TEA guidelines, so language is, no pun intended, it kind of evolves through the ESSA guidance as it comes out. Title IV Part A is what we call a well-rounded students grant. It can be used for SEL, it could be used for safe and secure schools, it could be used for technology, it could be used for a number of different things. But if you use these funds for any of those things, then you have to do a separate needs assessment. You have to open up a different category of SMART goals and program reporting. And so what we do is we exercise the authority to do transferability between Title IV and Title II. We put all of our Title IV funds in with our Title II, and we do professional learning. And as you're probably aware, our professional learning program does actually address a lot of those things and the things that we provide for our teachers and our staff. So I think it's a pretty good effective use of funds. So it's a little over, it's almost 8.2 million for ESSA. Next on here is the special ed grants, IDEA B, Formula IDB preschool, IDEA B discretionary deaf, for a total of 6.9 million. Our Perkins CTE grant comes in at about 365,000. And just to give credit, Dr. Staley applies for and manages the IDEA B grants, and Dana Morgan's department applies for and manages the Perkins grant. 21st Century Community Learning Centers is basically an after-school grant over at Clear Creek Intermediate, right next door, for several years now. We've been involved with Harris County Department of Ed. This is actually their grant from TEA that they administer at 10 different sites within their catchment area. And we're fortunate to have Clear Creek Intermediate on one of their applications, and they actually hire a site director for us, and that person comes down, and then we name our own quality control person on the campus who happens to be stellar. And I personally have been involved with this program on that campus for several years, and we're on, I think, our 4th site director. In these last 2 years with the one that HCDE sent us has really made the difference. And probably the new administrator on the campus is doing a lot to help with that program as well. The Texas Education for Homeless Children and Youth, which we call TECHY, even though it doesn't spell TECHY, 68,612. So there's law called McKinney-Vento that defines educationally homeless students, and you know, in Clear Creek ISD, we're probably, not everyone would necessarily be aware that we have homeless students, but we do. You may not see them under overpasses, but they're doubled up with friends or family. They're living in substandard housing. They're using a trailer park, RV park as a permanent residence. They may be using short-term rentals as a permanent residence. None of these are acceptable under McKinney-Vento for the educational progress of students in public schools. And so they provide additional funding to meet the needs of these students. And we have a homeless services specialist who's full-time, who keeps track of these students, helps assess their needs. If they need to speak with a social work specialist or another professional, then she hooks them up with that. And those folks spend a lot of time and effort making sure that those students have whatever they need to get to school, to stay in school. And as you probably know, just attendance is one of the greatest challenges. And so we do spend a lot of our effort on doing whatever it takes to help them get to school. Transportation is a huge part of that. And maybe making sure that they have school supplies or clothing. The grant doesn't cover all that. It covers the personnel, and we're able to meet the other needs with other funds. And then the next grant on here is the Texas Health and Human Services Substance Abuse Prevention and Behavioral Health Promotion Grant application. And Amanda's still here. I'm going to credit the Bay Area Alliance for Youth and Family for applying for and managing these funds. This is $5.2 million over 5 years, and that's to support the community coalition partnerships activities to do prevention and promote positive behaviors. And I think that gets us to the end, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? Mr.
Yeah, I'll start. Just comparing, and it's kind of serendipitous that we're doing both of these tonight because we can kind of compare side by side. In the 2024-2025 budget, for federal program revenues, we're only showing $5.64 million, which is actually a decrease of several million from 2024. But obviously the applications you've presented add up to a lot more than that. So is our budget kind of, and if Ms. Benzine needs to answer some of this too, potentially, but does our budget kind of assume that we're not going to be approved for all of what we're requesting? Or is some of it maybe up in the air still? I guess what is the difference there?
So these entitlements, grants that he's discussing here are reported outside of the general fund.
Okay.
They are not in the budget that you approved tonight. The $7 million that we really report in the general fund, things like SHARs and any indirect costs we might charge some of these grants.
Okay.
The board does not approve these budgets. They're outside.
Okay. So it operates kind of like a ESSER in that way? And so do we have specific personnel who also kind of exist outside of the budget who are on these accounts?
There are several staff members that are funded in these entitlements outside of the general.
Okay. That answered the question.
That's a great question. You had me stumped for a second there, but we are required actually to put our federal funds into discrete accounts that are their own. It's not in the 199 that's local. They have to be in their own. It always starts with a 2 if it's federal. And we meet monthly with a report from the grant accountant to look at the expenditure progress throughout the year on those grants.
Okay, and each one is kind of its own separate account?
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Any other questions?
So since he asked that question, I'll go ahead and comment on the 2024 to 2029, the $5 million grant that the Alliance that you mentioned. And so, so that they understand, the Alliance is its own entity, right? They're their own nonprofit, right?
They do have a nonprofit designation. They have business relationship with Clear Creek ISD, and the grants are applied for by the district using the district's tax ID number. However, the Alliance manages all the grant activities.
And then like specific to that grant and Scott's question is staffing wise, the staff that helps, that grant funds is through the Alliance?
Correct. Yeah, the Alliance staff is, to the best of my knowledge, 100% funded by those grants. I say those. It's a consolidation of grants that used to be. Yeah.
Okay. So just I asked those questions so that maybe Trustee Bowen kind of has a feel for it. Are there other grants like that as well? There's 11 grants total that are listed on here. Are there other ones like that as well?
When you say like that,
well, like you have organizations, communities, and schools. We have wraparound services like the Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
So are there other wraparound services that work with the district to help facilitate or, run the day-to-day operations with other grants?
I don't think that really applies so much that we're doing. We do contract for services using some of the grant dollars for professional learning and for training. The special services will use some contracts to provide direct services to students, but I wouldn't say that's wraparound. There's not within the other grants that we apply for a really standalone kind of does it all grant fund like what they have going for that organization. Most of ours are targeted to specific activities or to specific campuses.
I mean, it's a great infusion of a lot of dollars. It's not part of our budget. It's not part of our general fund. Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here in terms of our grant seeking strategy?
Yeah. I mean, what's the goals for our grants department?
Always the goal is to support the superintendent's targets. It's to find alternative sources of revenue to enable the district to further the mission objectives. And so each time there's a grant opportunity, we want to look really closely at what is offered by that opportunity in terms of dollars versus what's required in terms of the activities that we need to engage in. If it's engaged, if it's aligned with the activities that support our strategies that we've already approved, and the reporting burden is not too high for the amount of money that it brings in, and the staffing requirement is not too high for the amount of money it brings in. These are all things we kind of weigh out. And if we believe we can put a competitive application based on our needs, our demographics, and the programs that we're willing to implement, then we're likely to go ahead and submit an application for that. And that's a case-by-case, every grant analysis that's done, usually by 2 or 3 levels of leadership here.
I know that we also have an organization nearby, the BAHEB. And BAHEB has, I guess, a whole database of grants that people can go in and read through. I like using our community partners, and of course, whether they're a local nonprofit, it's great that we find ways to infuse additional dollars, millions of dollars. I don't know. I didn't do the total on this, but I'm thinking we're close to $20 million on these 11. I think we're in that range. So, whatever. I asked the question about where we go from here because, we all have our targets, we have our goals. And so, for the Department of the grant writing, constantly reaching, saying, that's 20 million. Next year, let's go for 30. Let's find additional resources. I throughout the year, I know I get emails saying, hey, did y'all apply for this grant or that grant? Whether it's books or lunches, transportation, safety. So that I know that there are a lot of opportunities out there that, we haven't captured. But I would like to see us keep pushing.
Absolutely. We do work really hard at making sure that we're identifying any opportunities that are out there. We do get some great leads from, say, the foundation and from others in the community. And we have actually pursued some foundation grants in the last couple of years that do branch out beyond what we would normally apply for. But we're always trying to match up our needs with the funding that's available.
Match up the children's needs.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cottrell. Any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Lowe?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just a quick comment kind of reflecting on all of that is I think it would be nice to have a little bit more reporting on just kind of the where after these are approved, like how many staff do we have, like what contracts are being approved under these grants, because they do kind of exist outside of our budget. And I know we got a lot of that kind of information with ESSER because that was such a help when we needed it and a big deal as it was happening. But a lot of these are pretty similar in size, and so I think more of these being added or going away, and just the changes that happen year to year could have impacts on our budget. And so I think having some more visibility into what they're being used for, I think would be helpful.
You're right, and Alice and I have already discussed not reinventing the wheel, looking at some of the information that's provided by other districts in their federal funds presentations, and we intend to provide more information on the FTEs funded. Just a quick point of clarification, if there's any contracts that are purchased with federal grants by the district, they still have to go through all the same procurement rules. So if they get to the level that requires board approval, then they certainly will come to the board.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board?
Just a quick comment to thank Mr. Kidwell for his years of service. Yeah. Short timer.
Thank you, Mr. McKay.
So can I step in on that? Yeah. This will surprise you, but Mr. Kidwell has put in his retirement as of September 20th, am I right? So I don't think that he's really gonna retire, but who knows? I know that. But anyway, but we are so grateful for those years. Thank you for that. So of a
Thank
short
you so
timer.
much. It's been a pleasure.
And I would echo the thanks. Listening to Dr. Engel talk about whether you're really going to retire or not, you might consider the source. So just think about that. I would share with the board, because I do think it's important for us to also recognize that these funds and the things that they're specifically targeted for enhance and enable and allow us to support the student and teacher community that ultimately makes up CCISD. And so where these things meet up based on the demographics and the profile of our learners and of our teachers, I think that's really what these dollars are really enabling us to do, to continue to retain and attract and develop students to be their best. And so I think this is invaluable. These resources are invaluable given the budget scenario that we're in. But it really does marry nicely with what we're doing. So thank you for your support and for your team that's been looking at these dollars consistently and making sure that we take advantage of every opportunity that we have that meets our student needs.
Thank you for those kind words, and I just want to make sure Amber goes back and writes some of those down. We might use them in a grant application.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations as well. Thank you, Dr. Engel. With no further business before...
Wait, don't we have a motion on that?
No, this is not an action item.
Yeah.
This was just a discussion.
Information.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay. With no further business, I'll adjourn us at 7:47.
You have the under? I set the